Hello everyone, welcome back to Ninetail Hobbies. This video is brought to you by Darkfire Designs. They hooked me up with this awesome ATTE model, so many thanks to them. If you want to check out all their stuff, link down in the description below. So naturally I started off printing off all the parts. As you can see, there's a lot of them and it took about a week. I used my FDM printer, but they also have resin ready models, pre-supported. Only piece I had an issue with was the back armor, but that was more of my printer than their model. I'm still trying to dial in and figure out my FDM. Once everything was done, cleanup started, I was sanding and pulling supports, but there wasn't a lot. It was actually really quick. There are keys to put together all these different models. I didn't print any of them out. I wish I had in the middle part. I used super glue to bond. I ended up switching over to Gorilla Glue Gel. It just worked a whole lot better. I used clamps and rubber bands to hold everything, and assembly was super easy and intuitive, but there is a PDF to go along if you get stumped on anything. And it was a ton of fun to build. It reminded me of building scale models when I was a kid. I used Rust-Oleum filler, but any type of filler or sandable primer will work. I laid everything out, and then I got spraying. My settings, I used 0.1 millimeter layer, and after priming, I only needed a cursory sanding. It wasn't that much. And the only thing that needed putty was the two leg joints. And then it was time to destroy this beautiful model. Initially I used a cutting wheel, but I got better results when I switched over to pliers. And why did I do this? Because I wanted a cool, playable piece of terrain. And at this point, I really started to think on how I wanted to make this as playable as possible. I didn't want just a big, giant line of sight blocking piece in the middle of the map. So maybe in my brain, a AAT missile hit it and blew it up. So I took a big piece of XPS, cut it down. I used some peel and stick floor tiles to give it some rigidity and durability. And these were just cheap things that I found at Ollie's. I think it was like $10 for a pack of 20 or something like that. And then I checked to see how the general fit was and started the larger assembly. And then I slapped up a bunch of Sculptamold all across the whole thing. I mixed together some paint, some Mod Podge, and some water, and covered all that up. And then I used some homemade flock of dirt and wood shavings. And I did this because I wanted to give it kind of a generic, torn up ground look so that it could fit on a different variety of boards. And then started with some of the little details. I cut out some windows out of some spare plastic from, I think this was a Tufts package. Held it in with PVA. And I also wanted some broken windows. So I cut up some stuff on some angles, because this is the same side that the blast came through, so maybe it blew out those. Even though it's a big piece, it's the little details that sell things. So I used the airbrush just for speed. The hard lines and the recesses got dark sea blue from Vallejo. And I know this is pretty glaring at the beginning, but it comes together really well at the end. And then I used uniform gray, but some just kind of middle tone gray will work really well. And then I used ash gray after that, just a brighter one. It kind of pulls everything together, gives it a cohesive look. And then off screen, I gave it a Payne's Gray and a Burnt Umber oil wash and gave the seats a coat of speed paint black. The speed paint and everything's not necessary, or the oil washes, but that's just my preferred method. And then I used whole red to stipple on all the markings. I just kind of improvised these by looking at the source material online. I could have masked it off, but I think this is passable doing it by hand. And then I highlighted everything with a scarlet red. Kind of learn this stipple technique from Bill Making Stuff. I really like it for worn metal. And then to tie everything together, I used some pigment powders. These are just homemade, crushed up from acrylic pastels. I used about 5 or 6 different colors to give it some nice variation. And then one final touch, I wanted to add some wiring. I figured these things would have some somewhere. So all the blown apart bits just kind of add something to it. A little extra detail that won't get in the way of playability. And then I came in, varnished everything up to make sure that it was nice and durable. So playability, only the middle section blocks line of sight, and due to the elevation of the XPS, the front and the back offer cover, but they only block line of sight in very specific angles. You can climb on the top of it, you can get in the back, it's defensible, you can use the legs as cover. So I thought this turned out really, really good. I super enjoyed doing this. Thanks again to Darkfire Designs for hooking me up with this. If you all want to try your hand at making something like this with this model, there is a 10% discount code, 9tailhobbies, down at the bottom. Follow the link and catch you on the next one.